Bare bulbing done right. That's right, folks. A direct flash sometimes is the exact right kind of light that you want for your shots. I'm going to show you why in this photo here. Now, let's think for a second. With direct flash, what kind of light are we getting? Well, we know that this is a very small light source if we're shooting, say, a person. So it's going to be a hard light. It's going to have a hard, very defined edge between where it's lighting and where there's shadow. We also know that there's no modification here. So it's coming straight out. So that means the light's going to be very specular. It's not going to be diffused. So we have a very kind of edgy and hard edge light to this. So what would it look good shooting with? Well, if our subject, if what we're going for is an editorial, raw, and kind of edgy look, then this is the exact right kind of light. And in fact, I'll prove that it even looks better than other kinds of light that might be softer for this particular situation. So this is an effect that is used a lot in, say, music and editorial and kind of fashion photography, all these genres where they need to create that more edgy and raw look, kind of that unprocessed, unmodified type look. So let's start from the top. Now, I want to mention what gear I'm using here. So I'm using the Canon 5D Mark III for my body, and then I also have an 85 1.2L. Now, together, this is like $5,000, $6,000 of camera gear. Again, from Photography 101, we've taught you all, don't get caught up in the gear. If you have the 85 1.8, which is a couple $100, like a few $100, and a Rebel, along with a cheaper on-camera flash, maybe a Photix Mitros Plus, you can get the exact same look, guys. This will yield me maybe a little bit better quality, but the only reason I'm using this is because this is what I have in the studio, okay? So there's not really any point to using anything else. Use what you've got and you're gonna get the exact same look. And the quality, the difference might be like 10 or 15% or so. And if you're a professional, maybe that will make a difference for you in your craft. Well, if you're a professional, it absolutely will. And that's why we pay for more expensive gear. But don't get caught up in it, okay? So, whatever you got, I have an 85. If you want to use a 2470, a 7200, that's totally fine too. But here's that first shot. What are the settings for this shot of Yoko here? And one thing I do want to mention too is look at the way Yoko's dressed. We talked about a more raw and edgy type feel. Well, everything from the way her makeup is done, to her hair, to her jewelry, to her clothing, it screams that look. So this is what I mean about fitting the right type of light to the look. Okay, so back to this. So this first shot is done with the 85 at 1/200 of a second at f1.2 and ISO 3200. So what is this shot? This is the ambient light. It's the ambient light actually coming off of our video lights, or the ambient light that might be just present in the room that you might be shooting. Now it looks okay, and actually because we have video lights set up, the light direction and the light quality is actually pretty decent. But you can see that we don't have a lot of light. We're at f1.2, 1/200 of a second, and 3200 ISO to get to the proper exposure. We're letting tons of light in, and it still is a little bit on the dark side. Either way, it's okay looking. We go over to shot number 2, right? This was a bounce flash off of a V-flat, and we're going to cover that technique in just a bit. But the look that it creates is a very soft wrapping light, and it looks great and it looks nice. And the settings were 1/200 of a second at f2.8 and ISO 400. So obviously we're getting a lot more light because we're not at ISO 3200 anymore, and we also brought the aperture up too. It looks better than the first shot by quite a bit, but this looks like a catalog photo. This looks like a photo that we might see in browsing a clothing catalog or something like that. It doesn't have any feel to it, any emotion to it. It's not the right kind of light. But it's a soft light, it's a great quality light, but it doesn't fit the look, it doesn't fit the scene. Going down to these images, these are hard, direct flash shots. And I think you'll all agree with me that these look best. For this type of shot, for this type of look, for that editorial edge, this looks better than this light. Yet this light is a far better quality of light than this one. So, this is the point I'm trying to get across, is that there's no such thing as the right light, the perfect light. There's just the right type of light for the scene and for the look that you're going for. Now, let's talk about how to get the shot and the gear used to get it. You'll notice this top right shot. This top right shot was taken with direct flash, but there's something wrong with it. I don't know if you guys see it. Can you guys see it? What's wrong with this photo? If you said the shadow, then you guessed right on. I feel like this is an episode of Reading Rainbow. What's wrong with it? Can you all guess? This is like what my children see when they watch their television. And then you wait for them to answer, and then they say, if you guess this, you got it. Okay. Yes, if you guessed the shadow, then you got it. Because look at this. I'm shooting portrait aspect ratio, right? So the camera's like this, which means my flash is coming actually to the left of the camera. So what does that do is it pushes the shadow to the right. Now the problem with that is it doesn't look very natural and it doesn't look very good either. So when we want to shoot portrait aspect ratio, we have a little bit of an issue if we're hot shoe mounted with our flash. If we're shooting landscape aspect ratio, then we're totally fine because now the flash is above the lens and that's great. But when light does not come top down, when it comes from the sides, when it comes from bottom up, it tends to look a little bit unnatural. So how do we do that? Well, I want to demonstrate. What we're going to do is we're going to use a little bit of gear involved. We're going to use a bracket, okay? This is the bracket that we're going to use. Oops, that was the nice. Sorry, Joe, about your screen. This is the Velo flash bracket. A very inexpensive bracket. It's 20 bucks, and it's a great modifier to get the flash above the camera. The other thing we're going to use is a TTL cable. This is another inexpensive TTL cable. This guy is 25 bucks, or no, this guy's 15 bucks actually. So together this is only 35 bucks. If you get the Canon version of this or the Nikon version, sometimes they're pretty expensive, and this is actually a really good quality TTL cable. What this will allow us to do is to connect the flash to the hot shoe through the cable so that they can still communicate. And when we're doing direct flash shots like this, I probably would still shoot TTL because there's not really a reason for this particular shot to go manual. It's going to be consistent enough when I'm using direct flash, okay, with TTL. All right, so how would we do that? Well, I'm going to demonstrate this for you once just so you guys can see how to set up a bracket. So I'm going to pop the flash off right now. And if you want to, you can mount it without the lens on. It's a little bit easier. We're just going to grab this bracket. And you'll notice that the bottom of the bracket right now, let me set this down. It actually slides up and down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this into the up position because that way it's easier to screw on. We're just going to grab our little camera here. I'm going to place this over. I'm going to screw this into that 1/4-20 slot in the bottom. We'll demonstrate this once just so you guys can see how it works. And then we'll just assume that you know from here on out. Okay, next I'm going to grab this little Velo cable. So you'll see that the top has a hot shoe, and on the bottom it's just a connection basically. So this bottom connection goes right onto the camera's hot shoe, okay? So I'm just going to put this down here for a sec. It's a very long cable, which is great if you need to take it off camera, but if it's on camera, it's pretty long. Okay, and then we're going to take this bottom, or the other end of this, I'm going to wrap it around the cable just a couple times, maybe to make it just a little bit less lengthy. And then we're going to connect this to this guy right here. Okay. Once this is on the other side of the bracket, now I have a hot shoe that I can connect my flash to so that these two can communicate. So all I'm going to do is put this guy right here. I'm going to lock it in place. And now I have a hot shoe mounted flash. So basically I have the flash that's directly connected to my camera's hot shoe via this cable, which means that the camera and the flash can now communicate. And now if I want to go with whatever aspect ratio I want, and let me just pull this up, I can go sideways. This is my direct landscape shot. My flash is still above the camera, or I can go back to that landscape. And now the flash is still coming from above the camera. So that's how you'd set it up so that regardless of what aspect ratio, which regardless of whether you're shooting portrait or landscape mode, you're gonna have the flash above the camera. So that's what we've done. So here you can see that the shadows coming from left to right. And once we take that flash and put it above the camera, then we're good to go and we can start shooting. Now the final tip that I want to give you guys, number 3, is to remember that you can use the zoom on your flash to actually control where the light is going to be hitting inside of this frame. Now for these particular shots on the bottom, I wanted the frame to be evenly lit from the edge all the way through. So I kept the zoom fairly wide. Anything like 24, 35, 50 at this distance is going to be roughly the same. But if you want to get that more pin-lit look, where kind of the edges have a vignette around it and it looks like the light's only hitting the center, then you might want to zoom it in. Zoom it into 105 or 120, whatever your camera or whatever your flash will allow you to go to. All right, so let's keep going. So what are the final camera settings? Let me go over that now. So the camera settings for all these shots on the bottom, it's still on the 85mm. We're at 1/200 of a second at f2 and ISO 100. Why I'm at f2? You can shoot as high as you want in the aperture, okay? You can go up to f4, f5, f7, whatever you want to go to is totally fine. For me, I want this kind of like isolated look where it looks like it has hard direct flash, yet only like her eye and only the hair in front and only that stuff in front is focused and sharp in the frame. And it creates a really kind of cool look, particularly when we start getting closer to the subject. From there, I just have her working the poses, and as she's doing that, I'm taking my different shots. You can see with the shadow falling behind, we have this beautiful hard edge shadow that kind of falls directly behind her. It looks really cool, really edgy and hip, and I think you'll all agree with me that these look better than the V-flat and the ambient light. Even though this V-flat is a higher quality of light, I would still prefer these every single time. When it comes to the processing side, these images have lightly been processed. We try to lightly process all the images just so that they look kind of finished and polished. We're shooting raw in camera. So all we've done here is we're just producing it to be a little bit more warm, a little bit bright, because this is the kind of look that you'd want to go for this. So it's going to be bright and high contrast. And no Photoshop has been done on any of the images that we're showing you, just usually a subtle bit of color adjustment, just a subtle bit of Lightroom processing. And we'll cover, Lightroom processing is kind of its own beast on its own. So if you want to get into our workshops on that, we have a full workshop collection on just Lightroom raw processing. So if you do take it into Photoshop, I would say you'd want to process just for skin tones. If you want to remove certain highlights, certain places, I mean, the kind of reason we're using this hard edge light is for those highlights. But if there's any areas of skin you want to retouch or fix, you'd do that in Photoshop. That's it for Bearable Wing done right. Hopefully we're able to show you that direct flash, when used for stylistic purposes, is still a fantastic type of light and a fantastic look, so long as it fits the image and fits the subject. Let's go on to the next video now.